We are here obviously today with Lidl in conjunction with the launch of the 2019 National League and a new competition as well for post-primary schools. And to win jerseys and equipment for your school, check out lidl.ie/jerseys for more information. We'd like you to show you a little video now, because we're talking about progress. We're talking about how much things have changed. I mean, even from Brid's time to Ashling's time, we can see already that the progress has been made in terms of access, coverage. You know, I heard Jackie and sponsors today talking about all this new live streaming, which will make a huge difference to the visibility and the recognition for these players. But Joe Molloy in Off the Ball did a fantastic interview recently with a Kerry player, Eileen Lawler. Now, I was lucky enough to see that great Kerry team play. They won 9 All-Irelands in a row. They won 11, they're equal to Cork, but they won 9 in a row from 1982 to 1990, if I remember, and I was lucky enough to see 3 of them. And to me, they're the hidden team of Irish sport. You know, nobody knows much about them. You occasionally hear a name, and there's very little footage of them. But Joe Molloy on Off the Ball interviewed Eileen Lawler. We're just going to show you a little clip of this, but I would recommend for any of you who have an interest in the history of women's football and to understand, even as players, the changes that have taken place, to go and look this full interview up. It's about 18 minutes on YouTube, but we'll just have a little look at it now.
I was looking through the various results. I make it 1986 was the first final at Croke Park.
Yeah.
Where were you playing before that?
1986 was the first one. I remember distinctly. We were playing Wexford, and we were all so delighted. It really made a huge difference.
Had that been a big campaign? Was that a big issue at the time, a big talking point?
Yeah, it was a big talking point. Like, every player, no matter who you are, wants to play in Croke Park.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a small crowd, but we didn't care. You know, we wanted to play in Croke Park. We played before that. We played in Páirc Uí Chaoimh.
Okay.
So that was the biggest jump up to that. And then before that, it was just parish pitches anywhere.
Was it really?
Yeah.
All Ireland football finals.
All Ireland football final. Like, we played Nina in our first final in '82. Poured out of the heavens. We had a shower, but I don't think the water was too warm that day.
Someone mentioned to me there might have been one year where you were changing in someone's sitting room near the pitch.
Yeah, that often happens, you know. And as well as that, like, the facilities at that time weren't great anyway.
Sure.
In all over the country, you know, and I wouldn't doubt that. But and ladies football wasn't well known, and so, you know, the pitches, you play wherever you got the pitch, and, you know, we didn't have any sponsorship, and mostly at the time we just kind of. You know, we made our way to the pitch, to the matches, and sometimes I remember girls hitching back to Dublin after a league final, or you know,
there was no bus,
or else, you know, if you were playing. You know, if we were playing Dublin or we were playing Wexford, there'd be always 1 or 2 girls that might be playing or working in Dublin, and you'd always get a lift back for them and whatever else. So it's just kind of
different times.
Different times, yeah.
And like, so if you win in All Ireland, is it in the national newspapers the next day? Is there there must be a bit of a write-up?
Yeah, I think actually one of the first sports journalists really to pay heed to Kerry was the late Con Houlihan.
Really, yeah.
You know, and we couldn't wait to see his paper, the Evening Press. You know, is that what it was called, wasn't it, at the time? And he was very good to ladies football, and he loved.
I didn't realise that, actually.
Football, yeah.
Right.
And he always came. We used to have our, you know, our announcements or whatever in the Merchant. I know she is Merchant down the Quays, and he'd always be there. And he was great. But we'd always get a small little bit, you know, 10 lines, and then following year might get 20 and might get 4.
Did I?
So that's what it was like to win 9 All-Ireland titles in a row, and that was the sort of coverage that they were getting. I remember going down to Kerry in, I think it was '89, to do a pre-All-Ireland piece. I'll talk about it again sometime, but there were no flags, and they had been thrown off a training pitch so that an under-15 local club team could train there on that Saturday morning, and this was the weekend before the All-Ireland final. So those are the changes, guys, that they've seen. And even Brid, I mean, what do you make of that when you see it?
Yeah, I suppose, you know, like, when I look back, you know, it's such a stark contrast to what's going on at the moment, and then you go back another, you know, 10, 20 years, and it's, you know, it's gone back again, like, you know, but just the leaps and bounds are just absolutely phenomenal. Like, even I remember, you know, one of the first years that I was on the senior team, I think I was 15 or 16, and this was before Eamon came on board, and we were going up the country to go to, I think it was just, I can't even remember who we were playing, some championship game, but we stopped off in Mother Hubbard's on the way up, and every single player had a massive full Irish fry put in front of them, and that was our pre-match.
Get it into you.
Yeah, so like halfway through the match, then you'd a lump of black pudding coming up to say hello. Like, but we didn't know any different. Like, we didn't think any different. And I think it was until kind of Eamon came on board, and I suppose he was coming from a men's football setup, so he had probably obviously exposure to a lot more professionalism than we had, and he just made changes kind of from the onset, and it was just simple changes. Like, granted, we were probably still eating a lot of hot chicken rolls at that stage in 2004, but a lot of that changed, and I suppose it's all information and it's all learning kind of as you go along.
And the coverage, Aisling, does that surprise you even? You know what I mean? That in Division 3 and 4, I always feel really sorry that they don't get more coverage because the papers always tend to concentrate on the top two. But does it surprise you to see that, like the level of coverage that was back then?
No, as Brid said, I think even in 2 years and 3 years it makes an awful difference in terms of social media. Even like me, Goldie, like the three of us would agree when Brid, like if you think back to 5 years ago, even All Ireland's, like they weren't getting the coverage that they are nowadays. And I suppose even at the minute, I suppose the current All Ireland champions, Moloney, probably should have got headlines as well. So there still is a bit of room there for improvement. But going back to when they were playing, like it's just the difference and the contrast is totally different.
Could you believe it?
No. But I suppose I wouldn't have to agree with Brid now in her fry-ups. I'd be kind of fond of one of them if I'm honest. But no, it's absolutely brilliant. I think every year, even comparing last year to this year, there's been a massive contrast in as well. I think every year, like a year makes an awful difference. And I think it's just getting bigger and better. But it's crazy to think back then that that's what they were doing. Like,
getting lifts home for the opposition if you could, or whatever, from final. Lorna, I often wonder, like, what are the challenges when you're at Division 3 and Division 4? And like Tipperary, a classic example of it, they've worked their way up. But is there more challenges at that level in terms of retaining players, getting exposure, and also I think getting exposure sometimes helps to retain players as well? Maybe, am I right?
Yeah. Like as the girls were saying, I do think it's so good, even if the coverage and the social media and all this is with Division 1 and 2 teams. I think it's very good for the sport itself, but for the Division 3 and 4 teams, I just think it is about the player retention, and like it's fine for myself and the girls who play, but we're not actually affected. But I think for say the juveniles coming up, the underage coming up, like they don't have a real idol to look up to, where say for instance like we have Goldie like all over the billboards, which is like obviously she's an inspiration to myself as well, but so the Dublin younger girls and the Cork, the likes of the bigger teams, they all have someone to kind of look up to. Where in Wicklow, I don't know if we really have a lot of that. And then
because you're not getting live TV coverage, you're not getting as much exposure on the media as they are.
Yeah, and even the men's, like if there was a men's or a women's game on, like majority of people probably would go to the men's game rather than the women's game. So I think it's more about the future of the ladies GAA for the smaller counties, and for the Division 4 counties is what is kind of more of a concern rather than the now, I think.
And how to build that. How to get
players on board.
The streaming of games, I know, I spoke to somebody today, they're going to stream across the divisions this year. They're not just going for the top divisions. So that's really important for people to be able to see Division 3 and Division 4 football, to give it prestige, to make young girls want to play on the county team. And then they're not going to go to America in the summer, because that's a big problem for ladies football, is you do lose players. Yeah. Brid, one of the things I was curious about was your first All-Ireland final was 2005, and actually I was looking back at stuff. Claire Molloy, who will be starring for the Irish rugby team against England on Friday evening in Donnybrook, came off the bench in that game. She was playing GA at the time. The style of football and the tactical analysis, I mean, where do you see the changes there now?
Well, I suppose, look, over the last, however, decade, we've never been a massive crowd for tactics, I suppose. There was always kind of a big ownership on versatility on Flair, about how poor some of our skills were when he first came on board in 2004. So like I said, he came from a men's background, so he just chipped away at the basics. And I suppose, like, even we met up there a couple of weeks ago and we were talking about like how we must have done the same 6 drills over a 10-year span, like, you know, but it wasn't the case if you ever got bored of them. The reason he did them continuously is, and I suppose, look, being a PE teacher, I would have a massive kind of, I suppose I would just have a massive interest in this, is a player's perceived competence, you know, and if you do something and, you know, you get success at it and you continuously repeat it and practice it, you know, it then becomes second nature to you, and then you can bring in speed into it. When you get very good at speed, then you can, you know, your decision making then takes center stage. And I just think like if you can develop someone's perceived competence, you develop them as a person, and you're giving ownership to them from the very start, and you're giving the decision making process to them very early on. And I think he did that from the very start, but he made sure that we were versatile in whatever position he put us in.
Yeah, you were total football. It was like total football. You could play anywhere, so a lot of
and like even I suppose look, that goes to testament of like even just for example like two of the girls like Deirdre Riley started that 2005 final in playing centre forward and ended her career playing centre back. Geraldine O'Flynn started her career playing corner forward, wing forward, ended her career playing wing back. You know, like he just kind of made, I suppose, just made us feel very confident in what we were doing. And I think, you know, that leads to people staying with it. And like I said, if you get success in something, you enjoy it a lot more.